make this panel nice and interactive, but of course we need to know who our panelists are. So we're actually not sitting in the right order, but hopefully you can tell who is who on the stage. It's up to you. I think we'll be all right.
A little bit.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Little musical chairs. There we go.
So today's panel is all around talent trends for 2024. So we're going to explore a little bit around some of the trends that have been going on for the last 12 to 18 months, but then also some that we think might come up in the next 12 to 18 months as well. Could be a little bit tricky. There is some space at the front down here if anyone wants to join. If you've got a spare seat next to you, if anyone wants to come through, please do feel free to do so. But whilst you're doing that, if I can get everyone to introduce themselves on the panel so you know who we have on stage here. So, Sian, I'm going to go with you.
Hi, everybody. I am Sian James. I'm the Global TA Director for Malvern Panalytical. We are an engineering organisation that specialises in scientific instruments. That didn't mean much to me when the agency called me about the job, but actually what we do is we measure tiny, tiny particles or molecules, and it has lots of practical applications. So the one that I can relate to the most is that we can analyse chocolate, coffee, ice cream kind of particles so that we can look at like taste and consistency, etc. I only joined in July. I was made redundant at the beginning of this year. We're setting a TA team up from scratch. I've been in recruitment for around 20 years, and for the last 10, 15 years have predominantly worked in engineering-led organisations. So that means managing teams through change, growth, transformation, or setting them up from scratch, which I've done for the last kind of 3 years or so from a couple of organisations. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope you enjoy this session.
Thank you. Kasia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kasia Oslowska. I'm a head of talent acquisition at LendInvest. We are a fintech company based in London. We IPO'd 2 years ago, so we're going through quite an interesting phase at the moment with all the macroeconomy that's going on. I've been in recruitment and people roles for the last 15 years, and similar to Sian, predominantly technology-focused businesses.
Thanks very much. Lovely. So my name's Jason. I'm the Talented Inclusion Lead at So Energy. We are a 100% renewable energy company. We've been going since 2015. I have an eclectic background, so I actually started my career as a professional ballet dancer before finding my new passion in talent. You'd be surprised how many useful tips and tricks I've learned when doing a pirouette into a senior stakeholder meeting. As my role might suggest, I lead on our talent acquisition and talent management function, but I also own part of our So Belonging strategy, our ED&I strategy as well, which is a huge focus for us in an industry that really, really struggles in that space. And I'm looking forward to today. Thanks very much.
Amazing. So this is our panelists, this is our panel and our panelists. We are going to be making it nice and interactive. So we actually want you to ask the questions for today. We've got a few that we know will come up. We've got a few that we have pre-prepared, but we want to make it as interactive as possible. So all you have to do, use your phone. You can either scan the code or just go on to slido.com and put in the hashtag Bristol Live 23. Whilst you're doing that, whilst you're thinking of some questions, we're going to go with one of our first prepared questions that we had. So linking back to the trends in the market, some fads perhaps as well, what are some of the biggest challenges or changes, trends that you've had to adapt to in the last 6 to 12 or 18 months? Happy to kick it off with whoever wants to go.
So the biggest one for me, and I was actually speaking about this with a colleague earlier, is so I said that I got made redundant. I think what was really apparent was me as a candidate going through the market, how poor candidate experience is. Has anybody else had to go through redundancy or had to apply for new jobs or anything this year, last 12 months? Yeah, lots of nodding heads. So I think what my hope is that us as talent acquisition kind of specialists, we can bring our personal learnings of kind of candidate experience and actually bring it back into the organisation that we join, and so that we can implement. And I think for me, that candidate experience is just so important. And I think especially when you're working at pace or with volume, it can sometimes be the thing that slides. So I think the challenge for me was definitely around the job market at the moment for recruitment is really tough. And actually, if we're in that industry, we should be helping each other, and we should be kind of I think increasing that offering.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think that one of the things that's coming out of that as a silver lining is I've noticed that a lot of the job descriptions these days are much more broad. They're starting to really capture all the different things that talent acquisition actually has to do as a role. It's not just about putting bums on seats, right? It's the employer branding, it's the talent management, it's the internal mobility strategies. So I know it's been a tough time for a lot of people, but what I really like is that opportunity now to elevate what talent acquisition does inside companies. Yeah, moving forwards.
No, absolutely. I agree. In terms of the talent roles and just generally the skill set as well, I think quite a big trend has been to elevate the TA function, not just to pure recruitment, but also kind of expanding into different areas of people and talent. And I think that's been, quite significant over the last 12 months.
Why do you think candidate experience has been so poor over the last sort of 6 to 12 months? And happy for anyone to shout out as well if you would like to. Is it because actually TA teams have less people, they've got less resource, more to do? Or do you think it's actually probably just been a poor candidate experience and we're only realising because we're in that situation?
I think it could probably be all of the above. I think the irony is that teams have been cut back, and so therefore you don't have the resource to be able to deliver, the gold standard that you really want to do. I think as well we need to probably look at our processes and our systems. Are our ATSs helping in that respect as much as they can? There's been a lot of noise on LinkedIn about automated emails. Completely get it, and I think we have to use them, particularly in volume recruitment. However, the tone and the content, that can also be revisited, because some of them can be really cold. There's no kind of acknowledgement of kind of effort, I suppose, that it takes to go in. So I think it could be all of the above.
Yeah.
I think just add to that is just the volumes of people in the market. I think that's also has a big impact. I think, it feels like the companies almost don't need to care or, really work hard to attract and kind of get those people. I think that's also had a big impact.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that one of the things that we need to do a little bit more of is like the human-centered nature to the journey that we're providing. Like if you're asking somebody to complete a lengthy application form, the least you can do is provide them something in return. And whether that's through automations or partnerships with assessment processes, I think that's something that absolutely has to be done. We've lost the human-centered approach, I think, over the last 12 months, because most of the TAs that have been in place have just been trying to survive.
Yeah. Absolutely. Go on.
I was just going to add, in terms of other challenges, we had a really interesting conversation, and we come from completely different industries. We work for completely different companies, but we faced quite a lot of very similar challenges, which, Jason thought that the energy crisis, was one thing. For us, it's obviously the macroeconomy and the finance. Technology is another thing for Sian. So we faced really similar challenges over the last 12 months. So it's industry agnostic almost, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, and that probably leads me quite nicely on to the next question. And actually, when we were prepping for the call, this stumped you a little bit. So hopefully we've got some answers here. But some of the challenges that perhaps, or some of the changes and some of those trends and fads that you've tried out over the last 12 to 18 months, because there's a lot of things that pop up that are shiny and new, and people try, but actually sometimes they are brilliant and they work really well for a business, and then for another business they might absolutely bomb, like they just don't work at all. Have you got any examples of things where they've worked well or where they've worked not well?
I have. So for me, this would be ChatGPT.
Worked well or not well?
Well,
Oh,
Both.
oh, okay.
It's actually this is the stinger. It's both. So I think that ChatGPT, when it's worked well and considerately, can be a very powerful tool. So I'm not somebody that works very well when I'm staring at a blank piece of paper, for example. So it's a really good way to kind of to kickstart it. So policy work, for example, is an example of that. However, where I've seen it maybe not being used for good is the generic LinkedIn posts and adverts that I'm seeing loads of at the moment. It is so obvious that ChatGPT has done this. It's very formulaic, it's very cold. And I think that we need to remember that we are in a function that screams for personalization. Like, candidates need to feel engaged. So whilst I think ChatGPT absolutely plays a part, and I think there are definite ways to get the best out of the system. To your point, Jason, around that human kind of element and that human touch, I just don't think we can forget how important it was. So there was somebody in my team in my last role who just went ChatGPT mad, and what was really interesting was his LinkedIn posts. I was noticing really samey, very boring, but you could also see the interaction and the engagement with these posts were really low as well. So actually, what value was it doing? So ChatGPT, pros, cons. Don't forget the human touch, I think, is mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go on to one of the things that we've discovered this year. But on that, I think one of the other things around things like ChatGPT that's worth considering is the advantages it provides the candidates. So actually, I'm dyslexic, having ChatGPT to help me formulate good conversations, good bits of text is incredibly useful. It levels the playing field. So how do we empower it during the candidate journey from their side, I think is really important. The one that we discovered, and I think it was because we reacted too slowly to the new world of hybrid remote working, is earlier this year we launched assessment centers for our high volume recruitment, right? Which was an in-person assessment center process. It bombed. It was awful. The first time we ran it, we had a 90% male turnout and a 90% male hire rate, which was awful. We have subsequently moved to a virtual assessment center process, which I know people get a little bit nervous about, but if done right, does work. And we now see a good 50-50 split of offers, male to female. But the days of in-person assessment centers, I think, are gone for good.
Controversial. What do we think? In-person assessment centres? Yay or nay? Yay?
Yay.
No. Nay?
Oh, it's a mixed bag.
It's a very, yeah.
Controversial thought then.
There you go, there you go. Cassie, what about you?
Well, just to add to that, so we kind of went the other way slightly. So, fully remote, people coming to the office when they want, and a lot of the hiring managers were interviewing fully remotely for roles. And what we found out probably in the last 12 months, that it is really actually beneficial to have some kind of face-to-face interaction during the interview process. It had a huge impact for us, and we really kind of implemented that into our kind of recruitment training, that we are really trying to advocate for at least like one face-to-face meeting. So we're really trying to make that effort, because the results are completely different. Like, the candidates are buying so much better into the business, coming into the office, actually seeing the culture and seeing the environment. And for the hiring managers, is much better opportunity to just sell us, and also kind of really identify whether it's the right person for the role.
Yeah. Are you seeing higher attrition rates since you went fully remote, or is it just not quite the right person for
I
the
think
role?
we're very lucky that we actually have, quite a low turnover. It will probably change, probably coming January, but I think generally we've got really amazing culture as a business, so people love working for us. So I think we're okay from that perspective, but we're just really trying to be as flexible as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to pick up on the employee turnover piece. I don't know about anybody else, but we are on our third year of increased employee turnover as a country, and I think 2023 is predicted to be even higher. This is something that we're talking about a lot internally. I don't think it's a temporary trend. I think it's the new norm, and it's actually going to be our business's responsibility to work out how do we move forwards and do we function in this new world of work, because for us, it's here to stay.
I I think attrition, I saw a really scary stat in a Gartner report that said 47% of people that would have accepted a job would also still consider accepting other offers even though they've already accepted it. 47%. And that's us as in recruiters. That's really terrifying, because actually once you get that verbal acceptance, they sign the contract, you're thinking, yes, done, let's get to the next. And actually that nurturing period of that pre-boarding is going to be super, super important to make sure that you don't lose that talent in that window. And I think that's really, really hard.
And I think one of the things that we speak a lot about, right, is it's the entrance of Gen Z into the market, into the workforce, that's kind of driven this higher attrition rate, because they prioritize different things. 2019, Gen Z made up around 6% of the workforce. Today, they make up about 13% of the workforce, and in 2025, they're going to make up 27% of the workforce. So if that is the driver behind this, it's just going to carry on. So we need to work out, how do we make value earlier? How do we make that onboarding experience more engaging? How do we make the pre-onboarding interesting as notice periods get longer, because people want to make sure they keep their people for longer? 100%.
I think there was sorry, I was on the wrong stage for the Slido, so that's why they all just appeared out of magic from that one. So I also heard a stat the other day, was actually, I think it's like by 2040, there'll be 7 different generations in the workforce as well, which is also quite, how do you sort of combat that one as well? So thank you very much for your pre-prepared questions. We're now going to put you on the spot. So if you haven't been using or don't know Slido very well, you can actually like some of the questions. So if it's a similar question to yourself, feel free, I'll read them out to you, don't worry. Do feel free to like them, and they'll go to the top, and that's how I'll work through these questions. So Debs has asked, do any of your interview processes include sending out interview questions before the interview? And if so, do you find this has a positive impact on hiring? Jason,
yeah, I'll start with that, although I'm looking at my name on some of those other ones. Thanks for that, everybody. We do. So we have 2 things that we do. We firstly send people a list of the competencies that we'll be assessing during that stage of the interview process, along with example questions that they might get asked. We don't do as much as go to prescribe the exact questions, because we don't want to create a really scripted, really overly formal interview process, but we absolutely signpost what to expect. And we've seen a huge uptake in the diversity of the candidates that we're now getting coming through the process because of it. An interview is to assess whether a person's good for the job, not to assess necessarily whether they can think on their feet. Maybe that's part of the job, and maybe it's not, but most of the time, it's about, are they right for the job? So I absolutely endorse doing this. And we've actually gone one step further now. So we've recently relaunched our new careers website, where we have our own dedicated interview hub. This section is there for people to prep for our interviews, know what to expect, to read example questions, to learn about our business. And it's dedicated purely to people looking to have a career in our business. So it levels that playing field. So yeah, 100%. We should be doing more of it.
Was there a reason why you started sending out the interview questions beforehand? Was it for neurodiverse candidates, or was it for...
It started as an initiative for neurodiverse candidates, and we've sort of found that actually it benefits everybody across the board. Sometimes when it comes to diversity, and we were talking about this before we came on stage, like, what should we focus on first, gender, or should we focus on ethnicity? Actually focus on people, like everybody. Like trying to, if it does good for everybody, it does good for all of those different demographics. And so we found that's really useful. Equally, and it's sort of slightly off topic, what we do now is also give people the opportunity, if they stutter in the moment, they can't think of the answer to the question, great, take it away. Come back to me in an email. Come back to me in the media that you prefer to communicate in with your answer. Because again, how often do we put people on the spot in their day-to-day work? We don't. So, yeah.
I think it's a really tricky one, because I sometimes, like you, I come to talks like this, and sometimes I can think about where I am in my business, and I think, God, I'd love to do stuff like that. And I think we just need to remember that these things only land if your business is mature enough to be able to accept that change. So I think sending out interview questions, we don't do that as an organisation at the moment, and that's purely because I started in July. But I think it's also important to remember that sometimes the biggest objectors are hiring managers, because it is so against the grain. Like, it is so embedded into our kind of traditional way of recruiting, that interview questions don't get seen before interview. So you have to take your managers on a bit of a journey with you in order for, I think, for that initiative to definitely land.
No, I agree. So we've done a lot of coaching of the hiring managers and really trying to teach them the right ways of kind of asking the interview questions and how they can build them and structure them. So we do not send them before the actual interviews, but we are trying to prepare candidates as much as we can by sharing as much information about, you know, our business, who we are. We are a super complex business, so it's quite hard for people sometimes to understand what we do. But yeah, we share as much information. We don't share the individual interview questions, but yeah, we are just really trying to prep candidates on the individual basis as much as we can.
It's setting them up for success rather
Yeah.
than setting them up for failure at the end of the day, right? So, okay, excellent. We're going to try and combine a couple of questions here. So, one's around specific in-mails or targeting on LinkedIn, whether it's as effective as it used to be, but also just generally how you're direct sourcing at the moment, if that's a big focus, where you're doing it and how you're able to move away from agency spend. So, is LinkedIn the answer? Is it less effective than it used to be? What's your thoughts?
I think it's all about kind of pipelining and talent pooling and really embedding yourselves into those talent pools. And yeah, we do. Our agency spend was 0 last year, which is, you know, I'm very proud of my team. But yeah, we're really trying to organize a lot of events. We run meetups. We're really trying to get involved with the communities of people that we're looking to kind of, you know, potentially target for our future roles. So I think that's what we've been doing. But LinkedIn is still #1 direct sourcing tool for us.
You're still finding it as effective?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially working for a very specific industry. So it's quite a small pool of people, so yeah, it's still quite important for us, and it works for us.
Yeah.
I think the thing with LinkedIn is that I think candidates can get exhausted by how many people are being kind of contacted, particularly if they're in a really kind of short supply kind of function. So I think there's also, you know, you're going to have to think of new ways to engage with candidates. I think that basketball's really good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I think he's going to win.
So I think it's also about quality of in-mail as well. Like, what's the hook? What, you know, I think it's about what you're trying to get out of that person. And I think I saw a stat recently where I think you have to do at least 3 in-mails to somebody to get them to reply. And I don't know how good recruiters are at actually following up on that in-mails, or whether that's even, you know, built into part of that process. But I also think people, particularly in this market, they don't really need to respond. I think they are, you know, we are still very much in, I think, a candidate-driven market, particularly in engineering. So I think people are just kind of like, I'm not even going to bother unless I'm actively kind of looking. And talent pooling, my God, I wish that worked for us. It doesn't. I think that there will be pools where we can do, but that means that we're nearly always in a reactive mode. So yeah, there's work for us to be done there for sure. And I wish my agency spend was 0. It is not.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely industry specific as to whether it works, and role specific. So one of the ways that we utilize LinkedIn sort of messaging and the likes is actually we have, you know, I work in the energy sector, so it's actually not as big of a sector as you might imagine. We're able to create really good targeted plans against individuals or groups of individuals we know we want to target, and that journey starts way before we've ever got a job open, right? It's about how do we engage with them, how do we share something they might like. That's how we use our LinkedIn Messenger. It's not a call to action, please apply to this job. It's like, hey, I respect you as a professional in our industry, and I'd like to communicate with you and grow our connection. It's then, you know, much further down the line that you put that call to action in, and quite often that call to action isn't a LinkedIn post. Hopefully by that point we've got their phone number or their email address, and we're able to then reach out to them. This, of course, doesn't apply to every role. If we've got high volume recruitment, you're never going to do that work. But for the more senior or the more strategic positions, the more niche roles, I do think it still has a place. It's just how you use it has changed.
Yeah. And in terms of agency spend, for those in the audience that are looking to reduce their agency spend, what would be some of your tips, some of your, you know, if you can do X, Y, Z tomorrow, especially I think the question had around it's very agency culture, so trying to shift that culture. Any tips for the audience?
I think it's really setting the expectations with the stakeholders, and it's often you come into a TA role and, this is how we've always done things, and the agencies are always the agencies that we've always worked with. I think just changing that mindset, and I think just proving step by step and really using data to support your arguments. That's what I always do. We do calculate how much agencies spend. We've saved as a TA team, and we have that number to show to our exco team and the board and say, this is really, it's working. So it's also an argument to kind of support us in terms of growing our team and investing in our skills. And I think that's how I would do it, step by step, but using your numbers, using your data to support your argument.
I would also say that the first gut reaction is to talk about, well, the cost, the spending. I think you need to really ask the why. Why does this manager feel like they need to use an agency? Is it because they don't feel like they're getting the right service from us internally as a talent team? Is it because they've got a relationship with that individual? Is it because they don't understand the impact of what they're doing? I think there isn't a one-size-fits-all. We need to take a step back and ask, why do people feel like agency is the right response? And I'll throw my hands up and say, ours is also not zero. But I'm okay with that, because we choose to use agencies when either the bandwidth in my team is just too stretched to do it, or we know that there isn't a strategic advantage to using a network like that.
Yeah, so my initial thought was don't let your hiring managers talk to recruitment agencies. So we're trying to wrestle that problem away at the moment. I think that it's about, I think you're absolutely right about the why, why is it? But I think also we are a function that constantly has to demonstrate the value that we can add to a business. We do. So it's something that I'm encouraging my recruiters to do at the moment, is that when they're doing that hiring brief, they're going on LinkedIn Recruiter, they're typing in some of the stuff that that managers are saying. So immediately they can kind of see the results. Is this the kind of candidate that you're looking for? No, it's not. Okay, well then what do we need to tweak? That kind of thing. But what it also demonstrates to the managers is that we have very similar, if not the same tools that an agency does. I remember long time ago, agencies did used to have unique databases that were very specific to them and their functions. That's now shifted quite considerably. So actually the tools that we have as in-house recruiters are very, very similar to the tools that agency recruiters have as well. However, in managers, again, very traditional thinking is that agencies are the silver bullet. And I think we need to demonstrate that we have the tools, but also to Kasia's point around data, particularly if you have talent insights, we can then also take that conversation to the next level, and we can start saying, well, actually, this skill's in demand, or actually, if you're looking for higher gender representation, you're going to struggle in this location, etc. So I think, again, we can start alleviating that conversation to be more strategic. So again, we're adding value more than just candidate. It's then we're giving them a market insight as well.
Being a lot more proactive, having that data, being the experts rather than the reactive. Yeah, sure, I'll do that, Mr. Hiring Manager. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting one. And do you know what? This has been coming up more and more in some of the panels that we've done. What is your view on death of the job board? Are you seeing this in affecting your organisations?
I don't mind taking this one first. I see the death of the job advert, not the death of the job board. I think what you put in those adverts has significantly changed. The people are really good at sniffing out a sales pitch now, way more than they were when I first started in talent acquisition. It needs to be about showing people a proper day in the life. It needs to be about putting forward, setting out your stall for why someone should come and work for you, not a prescriptive, this is a job that you should come and have. And I think, so no, I don't think there's the death of the job board. I think there's the death of the job advert, and we need to change how we're utilising those tools to connect with people in a different way.
Oh my God, I couldn't agree more about the job advert. I swear to God, if I see one more job advert that says exciting opportunity, it's not. Or if it is, tell me why. That's the thing that I would really say, is that we really need to elevate our quality of our job adverts. And again, ChatGPT might be a place where you can, play around with that. But yeah, I think the dream of the job. So I'm part of another recruitment network, and some of the bigger players have started to proactively source as their first route to market. So they're now actually using kind of job boards. They're actually actively going out there because I think they acknowledge that the time spent on posting, writing an advert, etc., can actually be better spent on direct sourcing. So it's going to be an interesting one, I think, about the job boards. And I suppose when I think of job boards now, the two that immediately come to mind are LinkedIn and Indeed. I don't really think about, whereas before it was like the grocer for sales jobs and something else. I don't necessarily have that wider viewpoint anymore.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with everything about the job adverts. I think, it's definitely, I don't think the job boards are anywhere to go. I think it really depends on the type of job boards. I think the more traditional ones, like your Total Jobs, Monster, Reeds, they are quite old-fashioned, but then you've got the kind of newer players that are coming, like Otta or Flexa. Like, they are the job boards that will, I think, continue growing, and they are trying to disturb that market a little bit.
Yeah, more disruptors rather than the traditionals. Interesting. Next question, which is, I quite like this one actually. What is the most unusual recruitment method you have ever used?
Well, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe not a recruitment method, but we launched our own community, our business. So we're in the fintech, we're a specialist mortgage lender. We're trying to revolutionize the mortgage industry by using technology. We're trying to simplify things. So we created our own community called Mortgage Tech Community. Not very original, but it's been hugely successful, especially in London. There's a lot of people working in that space. So we had people coming from a really large organizations, large banks, and we've managed to network and kind of connect with those people. And actually some of them are coming to us saying that they would, really love to come and join our business. So that's that kind of relationship that we started to build. And we actually ended up hiring someone from that, which is brilliant. But yeah, it's not really a recruitment method, but just something different that we've done as a business.
Yeah.
So sort of similar vein, what we did at the beginning of the energy crisis, there was an awful lot of the smaller suppliers who were unfortunately collapsing. So myself and my team, we set up a LinkedIn group that was dedicated to bringing energy professionals who had lost their jobs as part of the energy crisis into a group with professionals, talent professionals in our sector, as well as recruitment agencies that would be able to help them find a new role. It had interview prep guidelines, it had support, it had random conversations. It became this really organic network, which actually ended up resulting in us hiring some really fantastic people at a time when I think everyone was really struggling. So that was a really nice way of approaching it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had something really cool to add to this, but sometimes it can just think about where your audience is, I think. And this is like, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but I am going to say it. So I used to work for a housing association a long, long time ago, and we were looking for a gardener. It was part-time, couldn't find it. Now, your gardener, you're not going to necessarily find on a digital, like job boards, etc. So I think it's just about also knowing your location and where to go. And believe it or not, we found it by just putting up one of those cards that you get in the newsagents. Costs like £8 or something like that. Job done, great. But my point is like you need to go where your audience is. So, when we're looking at LinkedIn, for example, we've got quite a high operations and warehouse population in my organisation. Those people don't tend to be on LinkedIn. So where are they going to be? And where can you? I remember at RecFest a couple of years ago, there was a company that. They had like a QR code, but you can put it on everything, and they were putting it on beer mats in pubs, like around like warehouses in up north, and I thought that was genius because you're there with your friends, you're kind of having a drink. There's a QR code, actually. Oh yeah, great, okay, and then you can just scan it. So I think it's about just being really creative, but going where that person is. Not one size is going to fit all.
Yeah. Old school, little card in the
old
post
school,
office.
yeah.
I like that. Jason, I'm going to come to you. So Anonymous has said, love the sound of your belonging strategy. How do you use this when recruiting? And I know you've done a lot of work on your DINV strategy. So
where to begin? So I think firstly, from an attraction perspective, we shout about it. We talk about it. It's accessible on our careers website. We put our maybe not perfect stats, in fact, far from perfect stats, out for everyone to see, along with the action plans that we're taking to improve them. I think it really shows that we're committed to making those changes, and if you're showing an effort to improve diversity in the workforce, diverse candidates will feel more comfortable about applying. The other things we've done is around completely revamping our recruitment assessment process to be a much more inclusive approach. So we have partnered, I'm going to give a shout out to Assess First. We've partnered with Assess First, where now a candidate doesn't get looked at by a hiring manager until we have both their CV and also a really comprehensive understanding of who they are as a person, thanks to the assessment platform, and those are balanced equally. So where you might have a candidate that has a squiggly career and doesn't necessarily match the core CV you would be looking for, they will get a higher score on their potential and fulfillment in doing the job, and therefore will be moved forwards as part of the process. That's meant that the diversity of the candidates we're moving forwards to interview has been significantly higher than it has been before. And I don't see a lot of people looking at the entire person and not just the CV. And that's something that was born out of our So Belonging strategy.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Anything to add? Anything around sort of diversity and inclusion piece and how that fits into your recruitment strategy?
Sorry, yeah, you've probably got. We're right at the beginning. So gender is going to be our big focus, kind of next year, and yeah, we're just trying to figure out how we can. It's all about education, though, right? We need to again take our managers with us. So there needs to be a huge amount of education, of information, but there also needs to be a huge amount of focus on the on the inclusion part. So we're doing quite a lot of work on that with big hopes to accelerate that in 24.
Yeah.
That was a really great setup for where I was going, actually. The other thing I think is worth mentioning is diversity of your workforce is always looked at as a talent problem. Like, you need to go solve this. And there's a quote, and if anyone knows where this quote come from, please shout out the name of the author. Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance, right? If you hire diverse people, but they don't feel welcome in your organization, it's not going to work. So whatever you're doing as talent professionals needs to align with what your core HR, your people experience, your HRBPs are doing internally to develop a more inclusive sort of workspace. If they don't match, you'll just see high attrition of your most diverse staff.
Yeah.
So for us as well, diversity and inclusion is hugely important for our business, but we just don't want it to sit within the talent team. So we've got our D&I committee, which is a company-wide committee, and we have members from across the business, and obviously we represent talent from that perspective, but we really try to encourage and get the kind of broader business involved in that, and obviously that kind of then filters through all the different areas of the business, including recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we're going to go on to a bit of early careers sort of stuff at the moment. So have you seen a gap in work skills, such as working in a hybrid environment or building a personal brand for those early careers hires? How do you help solve this? And I think it's possibly a challenge I've noticed. If you haven't got, as you would have before COVID, them in the office all the time, training, hearing, taking stuff in from other people, can you see a gap in those skills? Or
Yeah, definitely. We've had few examples of hiring more junior people over the last year, and yeah, we could definitely tell that has a big impact. Trying to offer them some coaching and support in the kind of basic business skills, and just really, what are the behaviors expected of them. That's something that we've done. It wasn't a huge amount, so we managed to do it on like individual basis, offering coaching and support, but we've definitely noticed that.
And that's just with additional coaching?
Yes, just offering them support, like really chatting to them and just trying to understand what they know, what they don't know, and really trying to set expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I think back to my early career when I first started out, I'd have found remote working really alienating. And I think we've lost a sense of culture with this new kind of move to whatever version of hybrid remote working you've adopted or not. I think buddying systems works really, really well. Buddying systems outside of their core department, by the way, so they get to know and develop their own network is really, really powerful. We've got smart working charters, so the way our system works is we bring people in, but it's outcomes based. And I think what we have to do in those situations is to create moments of meaningful togetherness, right? It's not about coming in to do exactly what you do at home, but now in a different location. It's about having meaning behind them when they come in to create, more of a kind of a stronger culture, more of a team member feel to the process, rather than that individual sat at home in their living room. And the final thing I think worth thinking about, and of course I'm putting my D&I hat on here, is to understand that those individuals at the beginning of their careers who are further down the socioeconomic ladder might also struggle to work from home, right? So you need a process that's going to allow them to come to the office as much as they want to, because they might not have that spare room or that corner of their living room to hide, or they might live with their parents, and that will not make them as productive as they would be if they had their own dedicated space. So you need to have that level of flexibility.
Yeah.
I think there's also, I've been saying this a lot, it's about working with your managers, because I think, they normally would have had a lot of experience pre-COVID. And so I think sometimes people just aren't naturally thinking about these things. So I think it's about also educating managers to understand what does it mean. And it's about being curious about their own development. So I mean, I think there was a question about remote working and how do you promote culture, etc. That's for all of us, not just TA, but that's for all of us in an organisation to really learn about how do you manage people differently when they're working remotely, hybrid, etc. And I don't think there's a silver bullet. I don't think there's like a winning formula here. I think it is about being curious and asking questions, but getting your managers to really just to open up that conversation around early on in their induction, etc. Is what do you need from me, and not just assuming that they know.
Yeah.
And speaking of induction, you've got to nail that onboarding journey. Day one, way more if it's a remote onboarding than you ever do in the office. There's nothing more nerve-wracking on your first day than no laptop turning up or no person giving you a call. So I think more than ever, that first day has got to be absolutely perfect.
There's also something to be said that TA could be a really good force for good. So again, if you have opportunities to work at schools, at colleges, at unis, where you are able to give that career advice, I think there's a lot of information that we just have generally from talking to lots of different people that we can share with the generations with the kind of people that are joining the workforce. So I think there's obviously opportunities there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are very nearly out of time. I told you it would fly by. I'm going to do one final question from the audience, and I'll sort of close up. And actually, Kasia, it's for you. You mentioned that you've got 0 agency spend, so well done. How many roles did you recruit for? What's your average time to hire? Can you give us some insights? Like, what is there to get to that 0 agency spend? Do you have to have a massive team with a massive budget, or is there any?
No.
How do you do that?
Last year there was the 3 of us in a TA team, so I had 2 recruiters working for my team. We hired probably about 80 people, all direct applications and direct sourcing. We use LinkedIn Recruiter quite a lot, as job slots, as well as obviously searching. But yeah, we really tried hard to be able to kind of network and get into those communities, get to know who the people are that we are trying to attract to our business. So it's been it's not easy. It's a really hard work, but I think having like a really amazing recruiters helps. I mean, my team has been fantastic, and the relationship building, that human touch, that kind of keeping in touch, giving the candidates the best onboarding experience, that's really something that we focus on. In terms of time to hire, it's kind of average around 30 days. So it's quite good. So I think we've been, we don't really do anything crazy to be able to do that. I think we're just really trying to be consistent and really try to have the candidate in the center of everything that we do, and really be there for them and kind of guide them through the journey from when they apply or when we reach out to them to the day they start and beyond as well, and really kind of tapping into all the different networks that we are able to tap into.
Amazing.
So nothing really, sorry, I thought,
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very much. So very final question I'm going to pose to each of you. for the audience, what would be your sort of top tip or top insight that you'd like to leave the audience with?
It's a theme of what I've spoken about a lot of the time. If you want to look at your recruitment process, and whether because we've experienced poor recruitment processes over the last 12 months or whatever it might be, and if anyone has a product team, speak to them. Use user experience approach, right? Develop who are your users as candidates, map out their journeys, and then build a journey that meets both the demands of the customer, aka your stakeholders, but also your candidates as well, and provides them a good journey. I think we can learn an awful lot from the way that things like product management approaches their work and implement it into the talent acquisition space.
For me, I guess my top tip, especially in the current really uncertain time for a lot of TA professionals, is to really look at your skill set and really consider upskilling and cross-skilling in different areas of HR. I think it will give you that competitive advantage, and that will add value to the business. And on top of that, the kind of personal brand, it's been topic of conversations for quite a while now, but I think really investing in building your networks, going out there, obviously coming to events like that, I think these are all really brilliant things that will set us up for success going forward, especially in those kind of current uncertain times.
Excellent.
And my last tip is about be commercial, be data-led. And I think it's about really understanding, particularly to Kasia's point around uncertainty, and that we are a function that has to constantly prove its value. We can add so much more than just transact. Yeah, you've got this number of vacancies and therefore you need this number of recruiters. There's so much that we can do. And Jason made reference to this about how broad the job descriptions are being. So remember to remind the business about value that you're adding, use data and storytell with that data. And I think that's my top tip.
Excellent. That is it from the panel today. I really enjoyed that. I hope you did too. So a big round of applause to our panellists. Thank you.